Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
It was the worst feeling imaginable, and it's as if it was yesterday. And I'm not speaking about New Year's Eve or anything like that. It's been some years, and I remember exactly where I was sitting, in what room I was sitting on the floor of my bedroom. I had just picked up a message on my answering machine from someone who was a friend of mine. Had been a friend at that point already for, I guess, 10, 15 years. He and his wife had a very successful book and dietary program out, Fit for Life. It was called Harvey and Marilyn Diamond. Really nice people. But the message was so shocking, and it was so devastating, actually, that I found myself sitting on the floor speechless. I picked up words from my friend that essentially said he never wanted to speak to me again. In his message, he spelled out that he thought I had done some terrible, dishonest thing in terms of business with him and his wife. And I was just sitting there kind of like this, like deer in the headlights. I couldn't understand it. It was not my reality. And so I did something that was really difficult. I was this uncomfortable with it at the time, but it popped into my mind to do it, so I did it. And that was that I decided in that moment to take 100% complete, full responsibility for this catastrophe. I decided in that moment that I would embrace it as if it truly was entirely 100% my own single solitary soul fault. And that really was the worst feeling. On top of getting the news, I sat there going, oh my gosh, this is all me, 100%. The funny part about that was that little inspiration that prompted me, nudged me, that coerced me into embracing this mess as 100% all mine, had another shoe to drop on me. And that other shoe was, okay, now that you have taken 100% responsibility for this, it can't get any worse. I mean, sure, there could be some fallout here or there if there's anything to fall out. I mean, at that moment, I couldn't see anything else being worse than that. And in truth, the business deal wasn't ultimately going to produce a bad result for anybody and all. But that thought of, wait a minute, now that it's as bad as it can be, maybe I can look at it and decide if indeed all of it is mine, which I'm willing to accept, or if maybe some parts of it are really and truly not solely or entirely or even at all mine. And it wasn't the easiest thing to do because there was that depression, guilt, sinking feeling, like, when you think about Atlantis, it's that sinking feeling, everything's going down. Well, that's how it was in there. But then as I sat there and I started to look at it as clearly and as objectively as I could, I started to see what wasn't mine, where I hadn't done the thing that my friend had presumed that I had done, where I hadn't had any intention of doing anything to make this deal go wrong, to cheat him in any way, shape, or form. Now, this was all before I came into direct contact with the spiritual teaching. This was actually in 1987. We're talking what, like now about 28 years ago? And there I'm sitting on the bedroom floor, literally having drawn a big, imaginary circle on the floor going, this is the whole thing right here. It's 100% mine. Eat it, live with it, sink. And now I'm going, okay, this is the 100% solution. This is really how I'm going to solve this problem. And as I would learn, how I would solve other problems too. So what happened here was this going back and forth. Now, there were some parts of me where I was seeing how I contributed to this misunderstanding. I wasn't even real comfortable. I wanted to squirm away from even that. But then I realized, well, wait a minute. I was eating this whole thing a few minutes ago. And now it's like, okay, I'm a human being. I've got some role in here. I can see how this, okay, but I'm clear about what wasn't my doing and what wasn't my intention. There wasn't dishonest towards my friends. And I was trying to work business here, but gosh, how did this go wrong? So there I am, and I'm working this through. And I didn't get it all in the first sitting. Honestly, I didn't. As has been the case when I grappled with some other things in my life. And I might even go into some of those to tell you how that worked out. I have to tell you, this is all that I had really prepared and planned to say for today, this much, and just to see how it comes forward. So what happened was that about a year later, I was in Hawaii at a friend's house. And at that time, I was addicted to picking up the phone and checking my phone messages every few hours. I mean, this was pre-cell phone stuff. Can you imagine not doing this all day long? So I picked up my phone messages, and there was a message from Harvey. It was pretty brief. Michael, give me a call. This is Harvey. I want to talk to you about something. I thought, well, gee, that's interesting. Now, at this point, you have to understand that I had done a lot of internal work. And this was the kind of work that was going to eventually really dominate my standing in spirit process when this energy would present itself again to me internally for an issue in my life. And at that point, I wouldn't even really be thinking about it, this situation. Okay, I don't want to mix it up too much. So Harvey at that point's living in Florida. I find out, I get his area code, I call him up. Hi, Harvey. How are you? This is Michael. And I was complete in myself with it. Harvey wasn't someone that was now an opponent of mine in my mind. It was somebody that apparently I'd lost the friendship. I felt badly about it, but I was good inside. So Harvey says to me, hey, I want to apologize to you. At this point, I almost dropped the phone. Okay, what? For what? I saw this thing. And so Harvey goes on, he says, that misunderstanding we had, it wasn't the only one we had with anybody. You see, Michael, what happened was we had this manager, Chuck Ashman was his name. And Chuck had maneuvered his way into our life in such a manner that he was controlling all of our interactions and communications with friends and business people. We were losing friends and having really problematic experiences business-wise. We discovered it was because of Chuck. And it cost us over $100,000 to legally disconnect and get rid of this guy in our life. And I just want to tell you, I'm sorry. We got that it really wasn't you. I said, well, Harvey, I really appreciate that. It's really big of you. And I've got nothing but love for you and Marilyn. And I thank you very much for completing this for me, in this way, because I didn't expect it. And so that was pretty much it. in the following years, he and I traded maybe just a few emails about things, but we had this kind of a completion. And there I was after this call, you know, I'm surprised and I'm feeling this and I'm going, gee, this is kind of nice. This is good. This, you know, I'm calling it now the 100% solution. I didn't have that term for it when this went down in my life, but it really was. It was like, gosh, I took responsibility. I didn't do it to just take all the blame, but I accepted it. If it was all mine, then I was going to have to learn from this, understand, see, what did I do? How did I do it? How did I make this mess? Well, I got to see my parts where I did have miscommunication, but that wasn't what sabotaged and blew this deal. But I got such a benefit from the process, from being willing to do that and to own it, and to also be able to say, well, wait a minute, this isn't mine over here. Now, what's happened in the ensuing time, and there are some other things I want to talk about connected to this, but when and whereas I'm willing to embrace the whole thing, okay, this has got to be, where's my part? Now, maybe I come to see, okay, it isn't all mine, and this and this and this are only part, not mine at all. Okay, but if there are other people involved in this dynamic where there's a situation, a problem, a blame, or whatever you call it, they're not going to see it the same way I do. Maybe they're going to see something that I'm willing to say, okay, I get it, it's mine. For them, they say, well, you know, we had a part in that too, but this other thing that you think you really had no part in, oh, are you kidding me? So you probably have had that one happen to you too. You know, it's like, what do you mean? You know, and you're feeling, whether you've done this self-embracing the whole deal, it's all or not, maybe you think, well, you know, this can't possibly be my responsibility, my fault. And somebody else says, well, let me tell you, it sure as hell is the way I see it. So now, of course, that creates another euphemism here, possibility for communication, providing both of you are willing to, you know, go, okay, we're friends here, ultimately, simply because we're human beings and we both declare that we're in search of the truth. I am not a flawless being. You're not a flawless being. We don't hold ourselves or each other to that impossible standard. Nobody is. You know, I mean, in representing the Billy Meier case and, you know, the extraterrestrial play on human beings, those of us who've read all this material, those of us who've met Billy and the other people, I mean, the other terrestrial people involved, we know nobody's perfect. Nobody is mistake-proof, mistakeless, or anything else. And we also know that making mistakes is a very necessary part of our evolution, of our learning. So when we come into a place where we now, let's say, have a discord with another person, and we're both responsible people and we're willing to deal with it, it doesn't mean that we're still not going to have some ego issues, defense, denial, negotiation, judgment, you know, putting something off and pushing it away. Sure. But if we hold love for ourselves and the other person, and it's true in both directions, we can work through that for the sake of getting to the truth. The truth doesn't take prisoners. That old saying is, the truth sets us free. It doesn't take us prisoner. Those of us that get blocked and locked and trapped, where we can't let go, we can't go, okay, it's me, you know, I'm just another you. That means we have taken ourselves prisoner. The truth does not take prisoners. So when we encounter that other willing person, and sometimes we won't, we know we'll embrace the situation, we'll try to figure out how much, from 100% down to whatever it is, how much of it do we really see as ours? Somebody else wants to point out that we're wrong in that perception, but then they don't want to participate with us. That's a hard one. But we have to be self-responsible. And when we do the standing and spirit workshop thing that I created in 1990 helps us to get through that. And the reason it helps us to get through it even alone, on our own, solo, is because all of these emotions and feelings and things that are connected to problems also have a resonance in the body, a contraction, a shutdown, a location, a place where no matter what, if we want to deny it, resist it, try to negotiate, push it away, it's there. And that's the good news. Because we can use that feedback, that kinesthetic physiological congestion and shutdown, to do what we can't do very often, even with another willing person, and that is to get through the blockage and resolve it and clear it to the best of our possible, capability. When we come back, I'll go into a little more about that, okay? So hang in there. That's right, we're back. The truth doesn't take prisoners. I kind of like that idea because it's gonna bust us out of our self-imposed jail cells if we're ready to embrace it. And the first step, as we're speaking about here, is that readiness to embrace, not out of some new agey sense of, oh, don't worry, it's all my, none of that phony stuff. It's like realizing that we have to be non-resistant to energy, so to use a little tired term here perhaps. Our first response, we need to monitor, because very often our first response is going to be resistance. A bit of a shutdown and denial when confronted with something. Look, I'm sure like all of you, or like most of you, hopefully there's a fortunate few for whom this isn't and won't be true, but maybe you need it, I don't know. So I've had, relationships that have fallen apart, broken down, dissolved, all that sad stuff. And then that sadness and that hurt, I could feel that inside of me. I didn't want to at times. As a matter of fact, going back into earlier parts of my life, I suppressed it. I gotta tell you a funny story that I wasn't even intending to tell about a certain grace that life itself can present. When I was much, much younger, I fell in love with this beautiful woman at art school in Chicago. I was doing everything I could to not, because she was just so popular and gorgeous and wealthy, and she was just a shining light that burst into this art institute of Chicago, and all the guys were panning after her, but I figured I was gonna stay immune to all that, right? I majored in painting and cafeteria, meaning I'd bring my guitar into the cafeteria, sit there, and look sensitive and play my little songs, and it was working pretty good. It works to this day for people, whatever kind of music you play. It's not bad. It's a babe magnet type of thing. Anyway, so at some point, this girl that I was doing everything I could to ignore came over and asked me if I would teach her guitar. Well, I won't go through all the details, but suddenly I'm madly in love, head over heels with this woman, teaching her guitar, and we're teaching each other other things. And then that summer, this is like a semester at school, I had 9 months, whatever. This young woman says she's going to go to France for the summer and, be back probably in the fall, and she'll be departing from New York City. So several weeks later, I decide after, school is out that I'm going to go and drive to New York with a friend of mine, and I'm going to see her off. And I get there and I call the number I thought I had for her. And, we didn't have cell phones and emails and all that way back in the 60s, folks. So I can't get in touch with her. And try as I may, roadblocks. Finally, somebody who I'm reaching, who's her friend, puts her in touch with me, and she says, in a strangely distant and cold voice, let's meet at 5th Avenue and 57th Street, the park, or whatever it was. We do. There's Kathy. There I am. I'm all shaky and nervous. I mean, I had driven for hours and hours with my buddy nonstop, Chicago to New York, the whole thing, and up all night. And she said, first thing she says is, I can never see you again. Oh, what? My parents won't allow it. Nothing. No more. Can't see each other. We'll never sleep together again. I'm so sorry. Goodbye. And I'm standing there as, boom. Okay, I'm not going to take you through every bit of despair and that lonely ride home with my buddy back to Chicago, trying to figure out what just happened to me. I made this crazy decision when I went back to art school. I'm never going to let that happen to me again. No, sir. And funny thing, her best girlfriend and her girlfriend's boyfriend, they're back the next semester. I'm not going to talk to those people either. They remind me of her. Let me just compress this deal a bit. For 30 years, I held that pull that gate down and pull up the drawbridge and make sure there's cracks in the moat and nobody can get to me kind of energy. I was at a party somewhere in the 90s, and I happened to hear somebody mention this particular town, Saginaw, Michigan. And I said, hey, wait a minute, Saginaw? I had a girlfriend from Saginaw, Michigan. Really? What was her name? Oh, you know, she got married. She's divorced now, and she's living up in Santa Cruz. This is her last name now. And I thought, oh, okay. I filed it away in my memory banks. And a couple of years later, I had occasion to go up to Santa Cruz to help a friend of mine. Here's the weird thing, and honestly, it's just occurring to me right now that I'm thinking about it. And the woman who was my friend up there, she was moving. She had a young child at that time. And I went up there to help her move. She's the same woman in whose home I ended up in 1990, or whatever it was, with that whole thing with my friend Harvey, now that I'm thinking about it. So she's played this very interesting role in my life. So anyhow, she's on the beach with her kid, and I walk over to a payphone. You ever hear those payphones? They had phone books. Well, anyhow, just for the heck of it, I look up the last name, and there's the initial K in front of it, and I call up, and I say, hi. When the lady answers the phone, I said, is that Kathy? And she said, yes, it is. And I said, you may not remember me. I'm Michael. She goes, I remember you. Where are you? Okay, so here's the deal. So we arranged to meet. She's going to come over and pick me up at my friend's house, and she does. Nice woman, my gosh, 30 years. And life has been kind to her. She looks great. She's got a beautiful Mercedes convertible, 3 kids. She even became a jazz singer and a successful painter. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, all these things. And we spent hours talking. Now, we don't even talk about the past, that stuff. We talk about all those things that we've been through, right? And how similar some of these things had been and how dissimilar others were. And then time is racing on. And she said, why don't we go for a drink? I said, well, I don't really drink. And she said, well, what about Chinese? I said, great. So I go in there with her. We sit down waiting for a table. We're at the bar. I decide to check my phone messages. I come back, and there's some hot sake there. And I said, oh my gosh, this is great. Hot sake. I can drink a little of that. And she said, you know, it's pretty late. We've just let this day and night race by us. Tell you what, my daughter's out of town. You stay in her room tonight. I'll drive you back in the morning. I said, great. And really, this is literally how we, here's the bedroom. Thank you very much. See you in the morning. The morning comes. The door opens. It's Kathy. And I said, Kathy, the last thing I ever expected in my life was that the first thing in the morning I would see again would be your beautiful face. Wow. We get up, we go out, we go get coffee, and then she says, hey, let's play a little trick on some people I think you know. So we go over to her best girlfriend and now husband. We walk in, their open kitchen door, their jaws drop. And oh my gosh, and you can just imagine that scene. Kathy goes off. Now, Ralph decides to take me around town and show me. He's an architect. He's showing me these beautiful places. And he says, well, you know, by the way, the reason Kathy never really came back to Chicago, she was in love with you. I go, what? I'm crying here. I don't know any of this stuff. Okay, so now I'm a real mess. It's a year or two later. I'm going back up north. I get in touch with Kathy. She says, yeah, sure, let's get together again. And then finally, I say something about, it's been so graceful of you to allow me to, you know, to come back into your life and you into mine, just, you know, and all of this. And I really thought, you know, you had just rejected me. She said, don't you remember what happened? I go, what are you talking about? She said, you know, you did some pretty crazy stuff, the crazy scene. You were jealous about some guy who was coming into town who was just a childhood friend. I said, oh my gosh, wait a minute. And suddenly this whole thing comes rushing back into my memory and I'm just melting there. I'm going, you mean this was all my fault? I was the idiot that scared you out of this relationship? She goes, yeah. And I just like, oh my. I said, Kathy, I thought this was good the first time we got together, but it's like you've liberated me from this stupid shutdown I've had, feeling like some victim of love when I was just a really young, immature, crazy, emotional, artistic type who had no control over himself. And what a mess. How did you ever deal with it? And I said, look, now I'm really so thankful. I don't know what to do. And we basically had it like, you know, it's like we'd known each other now suddenly for all this time, it seemed, and it felt like it. I took that lesson home with me and I worked on it a lot more too, because I realized that I had made this unilateral, stupid decision that somebody else had ruined my life and somebody else's family. Her folks didn't particularly love at the time this dark, curly-haired, artistic type who was playing his guitar. And these are people who were super wealthy. They had a big business with health food even back in the 60s. They were on top of the world out there, and they didn't want this little lunatic, you know, sinking his claws into their very proper, almost very proper young daughter. When I relived that, when I decided to embrace that too and to see, and there were different people, there were wives and girlfriends who came to mind. And I looked at this and I thought, oh my gosh, this thing about being heartbroken and shut down and where I was angry and hurt, when I let myself go to that, and when I got into the neutral positive state where I could let it give me its best shot. What does this mean about me? What is it? I'm a victim, I'm unlovable, nobody understands. I mean, what is this thing that I was running in myself? Why was it all about me too? What did I miss with these lovely people who came into my life that I wasn't, to be honest about it, mature enough to appreciate, to really love, not just to be passionate about, but to care about, be considerate about. And of course, it doesn't mean that they were all perfect, flawless people. I don't want to pedestalize people. They're not angels, real human beings, just like you are, and me too. So this thread, this 100% solution, this is very liberating because we get those core issues to come up and give us their best shot. We get to go, what is it? Oh, yeah, give it to me again. We get to pull away the curtain where the little Wizard of Oz is going, oh, poor you, or you're unlovable, or you should be ashamed of yourself. You're a victim. Oh, you've been, all this garbage, right? And where we then congeal all this energetically. So I am going to plug something today. Yeah, I've got new films out and all that great stuff, and please go and see if that's for you. But if nothing else, download that Standing in Spirit workshop. It's really cheap. And work with these ideas of how to free yourself by taking this 100% solution approach, because you will find that which isn't yours too. And you're not going to use it to blame others. You're simply going to be able to make the distinction. You're going to discern that which I can work on here, which I need to clean up and perfect, and that which, well, that wasn't mine. I got that pretty well handled, but I can always polish, right? When we do that, and when we start to see that everybody in our lives, everybody we know anything about, see or hear, any and everybody in the world, is walking this same stuff, just like we are, but not always with the same level of awareness. Not only that they have stuff but that they can free themselves to greater and greater degrees, and by so doing, create more of an empathic connection with other people, whatever you want to call that. This is really what it's about. Neutral positive thinking, embracing this, and then we realize that really and truly, the truth doesn't take prisoners. It does set us free.